Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, we've got an Omega level commander. Now, what exactly is an Omega level commander? Well, it's a commander that is an incredibly powerful commander that is a massive threat. And the Omega level commander for this deck tech is Ashnod the Uncaring. Now, actually, the image for Ashnod, for whatever reason, is a bit blurry, so here you go. A custom version of the card. Thank you, MTG.design, for existing. You're fantastic. Anyways, Ashnod the Uncaring is a 1/4 Human Artificer with Death Touch that costs 2 blue, black, red. She has, whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You may choose the targets for the copy. So, in the past, we have seen some commanders that are somewhat like Ashnod. Now, not in the exact same way, but Ashnod itself is one of those double trigger commanders, kind of like Teysa Karlov, kind of like Yarok, whereas those are, Death Harmonicon commanders and a Panharmonicon commander. This one is more so, let's say, Sacrifice a Monicon commander, or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, it's a very powerful effect to be able to double up triggers and abilities, and this one is pretty crazy. Again, every single time we activate an ability of an artifact or a creature, as long as it's not a mana ability, and we sacrifice a permanent with it, we double up that activation. So, double the value, double the efficiency, and double the fun, well, at least for us. Yeah, there are some pretty crazy, powerful, and brutal things that we can do with this commander, and it definitely lives up to the name of an Omega level commander. Now, before we jump into the episode, a quick reminder that every single card on this episode, except the commander, is less than $1, so even though the commander is decently expensive, it's still a very budget-friendly deck. Also, as I take you through the cards on this episode, I'm going to be taking you through different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. And finally, if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And now with all that said, let's jump into it. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. But actually, with this commander, again, if our commander is in play, it's going to double up on that activation, essentially ramping us by 2 lands, which is incredible. But of course, we also have some mana rocks that can help us out, and Arcane Signet is a great one. It can tap for any of our colors, and then the Talismans, which are Creativity and Dominance, can each tap for either a colorless or one of our 2 colors, and they deal 1 damage to us. Moving on, of course, we're going to be running our signets as well with Izzet, Rakdos, and Dimir. By paying 1 into them, we can tap for their guild's colors. And then next up, there's Felwar Stone, which can tap for any of our colors most of the time, depending on what lands our opponents have. And then Mind Stone and Commander Sphere are really good with this commander. Mind Stone can tap for a colorless, and by paying 1, we can tap and sacrifice to draw a card. But again, with this commander, this is essentially draw 2. And the same goes for Commander Sphere, which we can tap for any of our colors, and we can also sacrifice it, and again, if our commander's in play, draw 2 cards. Speaking of drawing cards, there's Hedron Archive, which we can tap for 2, and by paying 2, we can tap and sacrifice it, draw 2 cards, but again, if our commander can double that up as well, to 4, that is quite crazy. And then we've got Navigation Orb, which has pay 2, tap, and sacrifice it, go get 2 basic land cards, and or gate cards, reveal them. 1 goes into play tapped, 1 goes into your hand. But again, our commander will double that up, so we ramp by 2 and get 2 more cards into our hand. Whereas Burnished Heart has pay 3 and sacrifice it, go get 2 basics, put them in play tapped. So this is pretty crazy, going and getting 4 lands into play tapped thanks to our commander. Yeah, Ashnod Sacrifice a Harmonicon, or whatever we're calling it, can really provide a ton of value. And speaking of value from creatures, we're not done just yet, so let's talk about Dreamscape Artist, which has pay 2 and a blue, tap, discard a card, sacrifice a land, search your library for the 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So this is kind of like a repeatable Harrow, and again, with our commander doubling up that ability, we get to go get 4 lands into play tapped every single time we do this. But we can also double up something else with Ruthless Knave. It has pay 2 and a black, sacrifice a creature, create 2 treasures. So yeah, being able to sacrifice a single creature to get 4 treasures is pretty crazy. And on top of that, we can sacrifice 3 treasures to draw a card if we really want to. Next up though, there's Tribute Mage, which doesn't have a sacrifice ability, but can help us go get something that can really help with them. Has when enters the battlefield to be searched life for an artifact card with converted mana cost 2, reveal upon your hand, then shuffle. Now we actually have a lot of great options for this, but one definitely stands above the rest and stands above every single other card in the deck in my opinion, and that would be the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Liquid Metal Coating. It's an artifact for 2 that has tap, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. Again, our commander cares about the abilities of creatures and artifacts sacrificing permanents. So this card allows our commander to actually care about cards that aren't actually artifacts, which includes lands. And yes, there are certain lands that we would absolutely love to turn into artifacts so that we can utilize them and double up their ability with our commander's trigger. And by doing that with certain lands, well, we can actually ramp even just by using simple lands. And we'll get to those lands here in a bit, but yeah, just know that Liquid Metal Coating can help make some massive plays throughout the game for us. And that's why Liquid Metal Coating is the Golden Pig of this deck. But of course, it's not the only card that can help us with some fantastic sacrifice value. So moving on, we've got Viserys here, which can sacrifice a creature to help us scry 1, but again with our commander, we're going to double that up to scry 2, so this can help us dig even deeper into our deck for some fantastic card selection. And then Woe Strider is very similar, sacrifice another creature, scry 1, and on top of that, it gives us a 0/1 goat creature token to utilize. And of course, there are actually situations that we actually want to sacrifice creatures in, and we'll talk about some of those here in a bit. But of course, next up, we've got some other great sacrifice outlets that our commander can double up, like Dockside Chef, Skullport Merchant, and Thallid Soothsayer. Dockside Chef lets us sacrifice an artifact or creature for 1 and a black, and we draw a card, and again, that's going to double up to 2. And then Skullport Merchant gives us a treasure when it comes into play, and we can sacrifice a creature or a treasure for that 1 and a black to draw a card, or again, 2 with our commander in play. Whereas Thallid Soothsayer is only going to have us sacrifice creatures, but again, for 2 mana, we draw 2 cards. Yeah, that's quite fantastic. Moving on, how about Vampiric Rites, which again, Liquid Metal Torque can help us out with. Sacrifice a creature, you gain 1 life and draw a card for 1 and a black. And then Trading Post does a lot of things, so here we go. By paying 1 and tapping it, we can do one of 4 things. Discard a card, you gain 4 life. Pay 1 life, you get a 0/1 goat creature token. Sacrifice a creature, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. And again, keep in mind our commander will double up those last 2 since they involve sacrificing. Next up, there's Shadowheart, which lets us sacrifice other creatures and draw cards equal to their power. And again, when that is doubled, this can lead to a massive card draw. Up next, we've got Sivirus Nightmare Speaker, which lets us tap it and sacrifice another creature and artifact, and then for each opponent, we mill a card, then that card goes from our graveyard back to our hand unless that player pays 3 life. So this essentially is going to trigger twice thanks to our commander, so yeah, we fill our graveyard with 6 cards, and our opponents have to determine if a lot of life lost is worth it, or if they're going to give us the cards. And speaking of getting cards into our graveyard, how about Magus of the Wheel, which has to pay 1 in a red, tap, and sacrifice it. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. Doubling this up is going to have players draw 7 cards, discard it, and then draw 7 more, so yeah, we can fill our graveyard quite quickly with this, and a lot of cards in this deck can help fully utilize those cards in our graveyard. And we can also fill our graveyard with Camber, which has, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life and create a blood token. So yeah, being able to sacrifice blood tokens lets us discard a single card and sacrifice them, and now with this commander, draw 2 cards. And of course, we can also make use out of clues with Eloise Nefalia's Sleuth. Whenever another creature you control dies, investigate, and again, by sacrificing that clue, we're going to be drawing 2 cards thanks to our commander. On top of that, whenever we sacrifice a token, we surveil 1, and yeah, we've got plenty of ways to make tokens in this deck, so we can fill our graveyard quite quickly and have some great card selection with that. And then Mnemonic Sphere has pay 1 to blue, sacrifice it, draw 2 cards, which again doubles to 4, or we can channel it away for a single card if we need to. Whereas Courier's Capsule doesn't have that same flexibility, but still we can sacrifice it to draw 4 cards thanks to our commander. But now that we've talked about ways to draw a lot of cards, what are some of the cards that we're hoping to draw into? First up, how about Doom Necromancer, which has pay a black mana tap and sacrifice it, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, with our commander, we double that up to 2 creatures for the price of 1. Or how about Whisper Blood Liturgist, tap, sacrifice 2 creatures, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, that doubles to 2, so we get back the same amount of creatures that we're sacrificing. And of course, we can sacrifice some creature fodder that we really don't care all that much about to get some much better creatures back into play. And speaking of sacrificing creature fodder, how about Jalira Master Polymorphous, a legendary creature that says, pay 2 and a blue, tap, sacrifice another creature, reveal cards in the top of your library to reveal a non-legendary creature card. Put that card on the battlefield, the rest of the bottom of your library in random order. So basically, polymorph, hit something big, have fun. But of course, artifacts get to have some fun as well with Scrap Welder. Tap, sacrifice an artifact with mana value X, return target artifact card with mana value less than X from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn. So by sacrificing a single artifact, we can get 2 artifacts back. Or we can utilize an artifact like Dollhouse of Horrors to utilize cards in our graveyard. It has pay 1 and tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a token that's copy the exiled card, except it's a 0/0 construct artifact, in addition to other types, and it has this creature gets ++1 for each construct you control, gains haste until end of turn. So the more that we do this, the larger our construct army gets, and again, keep in mind that by getting a token copy of that creature and it also being an artifact, we've got plenty of ways to benefit from it being an artifact, whether again that's a sacrifice effect or whatnot. But of course, this isn't the only way that we can make creatures. Because we've got plenty of other ways to create creature fodder with cards like Weaponcraft Enthusiast, Mirror Battlesphere, and Pentavis. Weaponcraft Enthusiast has Fabricate 2, so when it enters the battlefield, we can make 2 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. And again, keep in mind, them being both artifacts and creatures is very, very relevant for this deck. Whereas Mirror Battlesphere is going to make us a lot of artifact creature tokens, for them to be exact, for 1/1 mirrors, and when it attacks, we can also tap them to deal some extra damage. And then Pentavis can also make us a lot of creature tokens. It enters the battlefield with 5 counters on it. By paying 1, we can remove a counter from it to make a Pentavite. By paying 1, we can sacrifice a Pentavite to get a counter on Pentavis, but again, our commander will double that up for us. So in combination with this commander, this is just a fodder generating engine. And speaking of that, there's Loyal Apprentice, which has Lieutenant at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you control your commander, create a 1/1 Thopter artifact creature token with flying. And then there's Thopter Spy Network, which makes Thopters in a different way. At the beginning of our upkeep, if we control an artifact, and again, we've got a ton of artifacts in this deck, we can make a Thopter. On top of that, this can also provide us a lot of card advantage throughout the game. It says, whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Next up, Oni Cult Anvil can help us replace some of our artifacts. It says, whenever one or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. This ability only triggers once each turn. And we can also double up on its own trigger by tapping and sacrificing artifact. It's going to deal 1 damage each opponent. We gain 1 life. So we can ping our opponents down for 2 instead. But of course, this isn't the only way that we can punish our opponents. Because we're also going to be running plenty of fantastic ways to remove our opponent's things, and ways that we can double up on them with cards like Pyrite Spellbomb, Aether Spellbomb, and Necrogen Spellbomb. Pyrite has pay a red, sacrifice it, deals 2 damage to any target, or we can pay 1 to sacrifice it to draw a card, and again, keep in mind, whichever one we choose, as long as our commander's in play, we double it up. So of course, the same goes for Aether Spellbomb, pay a blue, sacrifice it, return target creature to owner's hand, or pay 1, sacrifice it, draw a card. And then Necrogen, of course, can also draw us a card, or we can pay a black and sacrifice it, and target player discards a card from their hand. Or we can punish opponents by taking out some of their creatures with cards like Executioner's Capsule, Stronghold Assassin, and Viridian Longbow. Executioner's Capsule is pay 1 and black, tap, sacrifice it, destroy target non-black creature, which, of course, like all these, doubles up as well. And then Stronghold Assassin has tap, sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-black creature, and Viridian Longbow works great with our commander. Again, keep in mind our commander does have Death Touch. Viridian Longbow is equipment that says, if a creature has tap, it deals 1 damage to any target. So, of course, that is a one-shot KO essentially on any single creature in play. We can also take out our opponent's creatures in different ways, though, with Lorien the Diversion, which has pay 2, sacrifice an artifact or creature, go target creature. So again, that does get doubled up, and we can send our opponent's creatures out to do our dirty work and into really bad situations. And then Chittering Witch has, when it enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 black rat creature tokens, the number of opponents you have, so usually that's 3, and by paying 1 in black, we can sacrifice a creature, and target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, which of course doubles to -4/-4 if we want to take out 1 creature, or -2/-2 on 2 tiny creatures. In a somewhat similar way, there's Siege Gang Commander. When it enters the battlefield, we get 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and by paying 1 in red and sacrificing a goblin, it's going to deal 2 damage to any target. So of course, this can even burn our opponents as well. Or we can utilize a flexible board wipe like Aether Gale, which is going to bounce 6 target non-land permanents back to the owner's hands, or in Garrick's Wake, which is, well, not flexible, but one-sided. Destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. But of course, we are not quite done throwing a wrench into our opponent's plans just yet. Because we also are going to protect our commander with cards like Giant's Amulet and Mask of Avacyn. Giant's Amulet has equipped creature gets +0/+1 and has equipped creature gets +0/+1 and has hexproof as long as it's untapped. And then Mask of Avacyn doesn't care if our commander is tapped or untapped, +1/+2 and hexproof. Moving on, we've also got some counter spells which can help us out as well with Negate and Unwind. Negate's going to counter target non-creature spell, and Unwind's going to have us counter target non-creature spell, and we untap up to 3 lands. But on top of throwing a wrench in our opponent's plans by stop them from doing what we don't want them to do, well, we can also stop their plans by taking them out with cards like Lampad of Death's Vigil, Zulport Cutthroat, and Falconwrath Noble. Lampad of Death's Vigil has pay 1, sacrifice a creature, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life, which again is going to be doubled up with our commander's trigger, so this can be a fantastic way to very quickly drain our opponents. And then Zulport Cutthroat and Falconwrath Noble won't double up with our commander, but they are pretty fantastic ways to drain our opponents regardless, because we're going to be sacrificing a lot of creatures with this kind of a deck. Zulport Cutthroat says whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. And Falconwrath Noble has whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life, so this counts our opponent's creatures as well. Or, you know, we can just take our opponents out with Psychosis Crawler, which of course can become a massive threat. Its power times are each equal to the number of cards in your hand, but more importantly, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. And when your commander is doubling up so many fantastic ways to draw cards, this can happen very quickly. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the lands. First up, there's Command Tower, which can tap for any of our colors, and then Crumbling Necropolis and Path of Ancestry can as well, but they enter the battlefield tapped. And then there's Exotic Orchard, which can tap for any of our colors most of the time, and Ash Barrens, which has basic land cycling for 1. Moving on, we've got Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which can be tapped and sacrificed to get a basic land into play tapped. A Mirror Landscape enters the battlefield tapped, can tap for colors, and actually can help ramp us by getting 2 lands into play tapped. Next up, we've got Riveteer's Overlook, Obscura Storefront, and Maestro's Theater, each of which come into play and are immediately sacrificed. They gain us 1 life and get us a basic into play tapped. And then Bad River and Rocky Tar Pit each enter the battlefield tapped. They can be sacrificed to go get an island or a swamp for Bad River, or a swamp or a mountain for Rocky Tar Pit into play untapped. And then Warp Landscape can tap for colors, or can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice it to get a basic into play tapped. Next up, we've got our Panoramas, each of which can tap for colors, so we can pay 1 to tap and sacrifice them, go get a basic into play tapped. And finally, we're going to round this deck out with basic lands with islands, swamps, and mountains. But now that we've talked about every single card in this deck, let's talk about the price. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, even though our commander is $7 or $8 at this point, every single other card in this deck is less than $1, so it's still a very budget-friendly deck at $39. And actually, in that estimated cost, every single basic land is counted at 10 cents a piece, so if you already have those basics, there's some extra savings for you there. And speaking of potential extra savings, you might be able to save even more by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, because of course, those cards need a home too. Though, do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.